I remember when the stars themselves bowed to the Dominion. From the moment our kind learned to tame plasma and bend gravity, the galaxy became ours. Entire sectors burned in our wake, their civilizations folded neatly into the Xarthan hierarchy. Our dreadnoughts, massive obsidian leviathans, drifted through the void like gods among insects. No fleet dared challenge us. No rebellion survived long enough to be remembered. We were eternity. Our architects reshaped worlds to our liking. The skies of conquered planets shimmered with the reflection of our orbital forges. Even the concept of fear had been erased from the Xarthan genome, replaced by the cold assurance of supremacy. To us, war had become ceremony. Victory, routine. Our enemies were history before they even knew they were fighting it. And yet, history does not end. It began with a whisper, a faint signal, half-eaten by static, emerging from the frontier system of Calaris 9. The report came to my terminal during the twilight cycle, routine debris readings from a colony we barely remembered. But as I filtered the data, I noticed the signature. Not natural, not random. It pulsed, rhythmic, deliberate. A distress call, perhaps, but the source defied our classifications. Within hours, the High Command dismissed it as sensor drift. A malfunction, they said. A ghost in the code. The Dominion had no time for ghosts, but the whispers multiplied. Merchant vessels vanishing without trace. Outposts cut off mid-transmission. Orbital cameras capturing only fragments. A metallic shadow, jagged, ancient, impossible. At first I was intrigued. Then I was afraid. The analysis came through 2 cycles later. The fragments reconstructed into a silhouette. A ship of crude alloy plating, scorched and battered, its hull patched by welding scars and primitive reinforcements. No Xarthan craftsmanship, no grace, no symmetry. A relic, perhaps, and yet the data was clear. It had annihilated an entire colony defense grid, alone. I presented the findings before the Council of Admirals. They laughed. "A derelict drone," said one. "Pirate craft," said another. No threat to the Dominion, but the image remained burned into my neural cortex, a dark hull etched with crude letters, partially obscured by battle damage. When our linguists enhanced the frame, 3 words appeared. U.T.S, Dauntless, unknown classification, unknown origin, unknown species. When we searched our archives, there was nothing, not a trace. Every known sentient race was catalogued, observed, indexed. Yet these Terrans, they had emerged from the abyss without a whisper of their existence in any galactic record. How could a species rise to interstellar flight without us noticing? How could they construct a warship capable of leveling a fortified colony? The Dominion's arrogance provided the answer. We never looked. For cycles uncounted, we believed no new species could rise beneath our watch. We had conquered knowledge itself, or so we thought. But this Terran ship, its crude hull and molten reactors mocked our arrogance. It was not advanced by any measure of Xarthan design. Its engines bled radiation. Its weapons spat metal and fire instead of pure energy. And yet, it endured. One of our observers said something I have never forgotten. "They fight entropy itself," she whispered, studying the telemetry. "Their machines shouldn't survive. But they refuse to die." That phrase haunted me. Machines that refuse to die. Ships that should not exist, and yet did. The Council eventually ordered an expedition, a simple recon fleet to confirm the report and erase the anomaly. No civilization, they said, built of scrap and fire can threaten the Dominion. Even as they spoke, the signal flared again, louder, clearer. It carried a sequence of binary pulses, a message encoded in the simplest possible format. My translator rendered it into our tongue. "We are humanity. We are coming." The chamber fell silent. For the first time in millennia, I felt the weight of something unfamiliar, a pressure in the chest, an ache behind the eyes. We had no word for it in Xarthan lexicon. Later, when I met the Terrans face to face, I would learn the word they used. We called it an education mission. A single cruiser, Xarthan's Wrath, dispatched to a border system to demonstrate compliance to the primitives who had defied us. It was a formality, nothing more. We expected submission within minutes, perhaps hours. Instead, the transmission we received was static, punctuated by a human voice that did not plead or bargain. It mocked. "You think we scare easy, lizard?" Those were the first words spoken to the Dominion by a Terran. The Wrath arrived above the scorched moon of Velos 3, where the Terran vessel awaited them. From orbit, it looked pathetic, angular, pitted, its hull a graveyard of patchwork plating and scorch marks. But the humans had positioned themselves perfectly. Half hidden among debris from an old mining ring, reactor flares dimmed to ghost light. It was not the stance of a ship preparing to surrender. It was the stance of a predator pretending to be prey. The first plasma volley from Xarthan's wrath split the debris field apart. The void bloomed in light. Sensors confirmed direct hits. The Terran ship should have disintegrated. Yet amid the cloud of molten metal, something moved. Fast, deliberate, reckless. "They're charging through the blast radius," shouted Tactical. Impossible. The temperature was beyond survivable thresholds. Yet the human ship, Dauntless, emerged from the inferno like a beast of legend, its hull glowing red, molten metal trailing behind like blood in the void. And then it fired. Kinetic slugs, crude projectiles by our standards, tore through the Wrath's outer shields. The impacts were small, insignificant, until one struck a weak point in the power grid. The shield flickered. Plasma surged. And then came the missiles. Primitive chemical warheads, but guided with precision born of desperation. The bridge feed dissolved into chaos. Xarthan officers barked commands, but their voices cracked with disbelief. The Wrath's captain refused to retreat. Retreat was dishonor. He ordered the plasma batteries to full discharge, enough to vaporize a moon. The energy surge turned the battlefield into a miniature sun. The Terrans charged into it. Every instinct screamed that no biological life could survive that level of radiation. Yet they did not evade. They did not hide. They advanced. The human ship disappeared into the blaze, and then reappeared behind the Wrath. Its engines flared and it rammed the cruiser's aft section at full burn. Both vessels spun into the shadow of Velos 3. For a moment, there was silence. Then, detonation. The Wrath's core went supercritical. We watched from command relays across the Dominion as the pride of our fleet bloomed into a second sun. I can still feel the tremor through the observation deck, the stunned quiet that followed. No one spoke. No one could. Later, we examined the telemetry. The Terran vessel, Dauntless, had sustained catastrophic damage. Hull integrity at 22%, radiation leaks across the mid-deck. But it was still transmitting. A single beacon pulsing through the electromagnetic chaos. Dauntless operational. Target neutralized. No victory celebration. No boast. Just calm certainty. The Dominion was shaken. Not publicly, of course. The Council broadcasted a narrative of technical failure, calling the incident an unfortunate reactor mishap. But those of us who saw the footage knew better. We replayed it endlessly, frame by frame, searching for some explanation. Their strategy defied all logic. They weaponized heat signatures, used debris clouds for misdirection, even faked reactor instability to lure us into overcharging our cannons. Every maneuver screamed chaos until you looked closer and realized it wasn't chaos at all. It was instinct. Brutal, refined instinct born from a species that had spent its history fighting extinction. I remember one analyst whispering, "They don't fear death. They've made peace with it." That line silenced the entire room. The Admiralty dismissed our concerns. "Anomalous engagement," they said. "A fluke. Send 2 ships next time," but something deeper stirred within us, an unease that no doctrine could erase. Because when we slowed the final frames of the combat recording, we saw something that chilled even our war-hardened minds. The humans were laughing as their ship burned, as radiation flayed their hull, as their own oxygen levels dropped to critical. They were laughing. Faces illuminated by fire, hands steady on the controls, voices carrying across the intercoms in grim amusement. It was madness. Pure madness. And yet it worked. We Xarthans, who had mastered the laws of war, who waged battle through calculation and precision, could not understand it. Their defiance broke every rule, every projection. They turned death into strategy. They fought not to win, but to refuse defeat. I lay awake for many cycles after that, haunted by a single thought. If this is how they fight when outnumbered and outgunned, what will they become when they have fleets of their own? The Admiralty continued their denial. Reports of Terran interference were buried, but rumors spread across the Dominion like fire through oxygen fields. The crews whispered a new word in our language, one that had not been spoken since before the rise of the Dominion: fear. And though no one dared say it aloud, we all felt the same. Silent truth take root. The age of Dominion was beginning to fracture. We thought we understood life. To the Xarthan mind, biology was a perfected equation, a balance of chemistry, genetics, and controlled evolution. Our forms were engineered to endure the vacuum, resist radiation, and regenerate from injury. We saw fragility as failure, chaos as imperfection, weakness as the ultimate sin. Then came the Terrans. When the Dominion Council ordered a formal study following the Dauntless incident, I was among those assigned to the investigation. We expected to find an anomaly, some hybrid or rogue AI. Instead, we found humans. Organic, bipedal, carbon-based. Laughably inefficient by Xarthan metrics. Their immune systems erratic. Their sensory range limited. Their lifespans pitifully short. Yet the data refused to align with our assumptions. Radiation that would sterilize an entire Xarthan colony? Terrans adapted. Oxygen deprivation? They trained for it. Catastrophic injury? They rebuilt themselves with steel and willpower. Their history was a monument to survival against the impossible. Planetary wars, pandemics, ice ages, nuclear winters, they endured them all. They had died 1,000 times as a species, and somehow, every extinction became evolution. They were, in essence, a paradox. The weakest species we had ever encountered, and yet the most unkillable. We called them the kindred of ruin. Their worlds reflected their nature. Cities scarred, oceans wounded, atmospheres toxic. Yet from this ruin they built ships that could defy gravity and fear alike. They did not craft beauty, they crafted function. Their vessels were not meant to last, they were meant to survive destruction. I once watched a Terran engineering feed, the reconstruction of a warship. It had been cleaved in half, engines obliterated. By all Xarthan logic, it was scrap. But the humans didn't discard it. They welded, bolted, patched. They called it refit. When they launched it again, I asked the analyst beside me how it could possibly remain stable. She shrugged. It doesn't need to be stable. It just needs to keep going. That was when I began to understand. Their resilience wasn't a trait, it was a creed. A religion of endurance. Even their technology reflected this philosophy. Xarthan design aimed for perfection, systems that never failed so long as conditions remained ideal. Terran systems expected failure. They were modular, redundant, self-repairing through improvisation rather than engineering. Where our circuits would shut down at fault, theirs would reroute through chaos. A symphony of dysfunction that somehow created motion, and so their ships multiplied, not elegant, but endless. Every Dominion strike destroyed 3. They built 10. Every planet we bombarded became a factory. They scavenged our wrecks, studied our weapons, reverse-engineered them without comprehension, and made them work better. They turned our own discarded might into their arsenal. The High Council was furious. They called it technological theft. I called it adaptation. But the greatest revelation came not from their machines, but their minds. Through intercepted transmissions, I glimpsed their psyche. Humans did not unify by blood or empire. They quarreled among themselves, nations, ideologies, religions. They divided endlessly, yet when faced with extinction, they became one. No decree, no command, just instinct. When their colonies burned, rival fleets joined ranks without hesitation. When one ship faltered, another rammed itself into the enemy to buy time. When their captains died, lieutenants stepped forward, untrained but unyielding. There was no hierarchy strong enough to contain their defiance, and no chaos deep enough to break it. To us, that was madness. To them, that was unity. I remember my first direct communication with a Terran, a captured pilot. He was injured beyond recovery, his suit fused into his skin. I asked him why he fought, knowing defeat was inevitable. He smiled, teeth bloodied. Because if we stop fighting, we stop being. He died shortly after, but his words echoed in me long after his pulse ended. That was when I began to fear them. Not their weapons, but their belief. For we Xarthans were children of order. Our wars were waged by doctrine, our strategies calculated to precision. Victory was achieved through predictability. But humans? They thrived in the unpredictable. They fed on it. The Council continued to underestimate them. They will exhaust themselves, the admirals claimed. Their industry is crude, their biology inefficient. But their fleets kept coming. Crude, yes, but each battle made them stronger. Each defeat taught them more. Their growth was exponential, their resolve infectious. Our analysts projected a century before they became a serious threat. They reached parity in 10 years. I began to see their true nature. They were not rising to meet our strength. They were teaching us what strength truly meant. I remember one of our scholars describing them perfectly. They are not conquerors. They are survivors who learned how to turn survival into victory. As our fleets clashed again and again, I noticed something terrifyingly beautiful. Each Terran loss seemed to refine them. Each defeat carved their species sharper, deadlier. Their ships bore scars like honor marks. Their captains named vessels after their dead, not their victories. They fought as if pain itself were fuel. We once thought war was our art. But humanity made it a form of poetry written in fire and blood. And deep within the Dominion's archives, among analysts like me, a rumor began to spread, an idea so heretical that it could not be spoken aloud, that perhaps we were not witnessing the rise of a primitive species at all. Perhaps we were witnessing the universe remembering how to fight back. They called it Operation Final Dawn. 1,000 Xarthan warships, our finest, our proudest, gathered in orbit above Ragus Prime. The sky burned crimson beneath the weight of our fleet. Our banners shimmered across the void, light from our plasma engines painting the planet below in imperial gold. For the first time in centuries, the entire Dominion fleet assembled in one place. Every admiral, every dreadnought, every ship that had ever borne our crest. The Council's decree was clear. End the Terran incursion. Erase their name from the galactic record. We believed it would be a slaughter. Our scans detected a single enemy vessel entering the system. No fleet, no escort, no reinforcements. A lone ship drifting through subspace like a drifting ember. When its silhouette emerged, there were murmurs across every bridge in the armada. It was massive, larger than any Terran craft we had recorded before, yet visibly broken. Its hull was pitted and blackened, its armor plates mismatched, entire sections rebuilt from scavenged Dominion debris. Radiation leaked from its flanks like blood from a wound. Designation: TSS Vigilant. Our tactical AI calculated a 99.7% probability of immediate surrender. Even the Dominion flagship's commander, Grand Admiral Xarthan, scoffed. One ship. This is what the humans send to challenge 1,000. Let the galaxy witness their extinction. We sent the transmission. Terran vessel vigilant. Power down your weapons and surrender. You will be spared. The response came not as speech but text. Brutal, unencrypted. Burned into our comm relays in primitive binary. Then we'll see you in hell. A phrase so alien, so raw that even our translators faltered. The battlefield fell silent for a single, terrible moment. Then the stars caught fire. The Vigilant moved first. We expected retreat. Instead, it accelerated, straight toward the Dominion line. Every cannon, every lance, every plasma array in our armada locked on the incoming blip. The Admiral gave the order. Erase it! 1,000 beams of pure annihilation tore across the void. Singularity lances ripped through the dust fields, collapsing matter into light. When the energy cleared, we expected wreckage. Instead, the Vigilant was still there. Its shields, crude by our standards, were overloading, but still holding. It maneuvered like no Terran ship we'd ever seen, shifting direction mid-burn, thrusters flaring in erratic bursts. It wasn't dodging our fire, it was predicting it. Then it unleashed hell. Dozens of hatches erupted open along its hull, launching weapons that should not have existed. Nuclear warheads, obsolete relics, detonated in synchronized shockwaves. Each blast refracted our beams, bending light itself. Following close behind, kinetic rounds, solid tungsten slugs the size of transports, slammed into our forward ranks. Our shields could not compensate. Ships shattered. Hulls ruptured. They're using nuclear detonations to disrupt our targeting grid. How could they calculate the timing? The answer came too late. The Vigilant dove through the debris field it had just created, emerging within the Dominion formation like a predator inside a herd. Close-range rail batteries roared, carving lines of molten metal across dreadnought hulls. Fighters swarmed, only to vanish under its flak storms. Every moment we thought it would break, it adapted. When plasma disabled half its systems, it rerouted power through its engines. When missiles crippled its aft section, it spun, using its own momentum as a weapon, ramming through our cruisers like a falling star. We watched in disbelief as our fleet, the fleet of gods, was reduced to chaos by one burning, broken ship. I was aboard the observation command relay when Vigilant breached the line. Our tactical feeds became white static. Through the viewport, I saw it, its hull aflame, its armor peeling, venting fire and atmosphere in long ribbons of orange. Every explosion it suffered seemed to fuel it further. I remember the screams across the comms. "They're not retreating! Their core's going critical, they're using it as a weapon!" Then the Dominion flagship fired its main lance, a weapon capable of vaporizing continents. The beam struck the Vigilant head-on. For a heartbeat, it disappeared in the blinding light. We thought it was over. Then, from within the storm, came movement. The Vigilant re-emerged, half its bow gone, armor liquefied, but still firing. Its forward cannons ignited one last time, unleashing a burst so violent that it tore the flagship's shield harmonics apart. In that instant, two titans collided. The Vigilant's main drive detonated. The Dominion flagship's reactor followed. The resulting shockwave illuminated the system, a second sun that consumed everything. When my sensors stabilized, the sky was full of wreckage. Hundreds of Dominion vessels adrift, their crews silent. The flagship was gone. The Vigilant was still there, drifting amidst the ashes. Half its hull was gone. Entire decks vented to space. But through magnification, I could see them, the humans still alive within. Still manning their stations, still firing at ghosts long since dead. Even as their ship tore itself apart, they refused to stop. Our commander whispered, "What kind of creatures are these?" No one answered. The aftermath was silence. The Dominion fleet was annihilated. What remained of our armada limped away, wounded and humiliated. Across the stars, the echoes of Ragus Prime spread faster than any transmission could contain. Worlds that had feared us for generations now whispered a new name, not in terror, but reverence. Terrans. We had thought them primitives wielding scraps. We were wrong. They were something far older, far greater, a species forged by extinction, tempered by ruin. They had taken every horror their world had offered and turned it into armor. And now, that armor faced the stars. In the quiet aftermath, as we collected data from the wreckage, our sensors picked up one final transmission from the Vigilant. Damaged beyond recognition, the ship's AI still functioned just enough to broadcast a fragment. A voice, human, male, crackled through static. "Tell them. We're still here." Then silence. I have witnessed entire civilizations burn. I have seen empires rise and vanish into dust. But nothing has haunted me more than that battle. The day the Xarthan Dominion learned humility. We had believed ourselves gods, wielders of cosmic order. But that day, as I watched a dying Terran ship defy annihilation itself, I understood the truth. They were not gods, they were mortals. And yet, in their refusal to surrender, in their will to keep fighting even as their world burned around them, they became something divine, not by birthright, not by power, but by choice. And as the fires of Ragus Prime dimmed, I realized that the myths we had long told of immortal, warriors and celestial vengeance were not legends at all. They were prophecies. and the Terrans had simply fulfilled them. The fall of the Dominion did not come with fire and thunder. It came quietly, like rot beneath polished metal. After Ragus Prime, the illusion of invincibility shattered. Our fleets, once symbols of eternal order, hesitated. Command chains fractured, admirals argued in silence. Entire sectors, once bound by fear, refused orders. We told ourselves it was temporary, a tactical withdrawal. But even then we knew. The Terrans had done something no empire ever achieved. They had broken belief. World after world rose against us, not under the Terran flag, but under their own. Colonies we had ruled for millennia sent messages across the stars, carrying a phrase we had come to dread. No being is born to kneel. It spread like contagion. Every rebellion we crushed only made the next stronger. Even our soldiers, those bred for obedience, began asking questions we could not answer. What do you do when fear no longer works? When the oppressed no longer tremble at your name? The Terran fleets advanced, but not as conquerors. They did not demand submission. They offered choice. Where the Dominion enslaved, they freed. Where we burned cities, they rebuilt them. And when they encountered resistance, they fought with precision, not vengeance. Our war councils could not comprehend it. Why spare what you can dominate? They asked, but the humans had no interest in domination. Their broadcasts carried only a single message, translated into 100 tongues. We do not come to rule. We come to remind you you can stand. At first, we dismissed it as propaganda. Yet, when our shattered fleets limped into Terran-occupied space, they found something unimaginable. Hospitals where our wounded were treated beside theirs. Food convoys directed toward Dominion worlds suffering famine. Children of both species playing in the ruins of our once sacred citadels. This was not conquest. It was reclamation, of dignity, of hope. I remained on Xarthan Prime, our homeworld, as everything crumbled. The sky was filled with smoke from our own defense grids. Riots tore through the lower spires. The High Council abandoned the capital, retreating to off-world sanctuaries that no longer answered their calls. For the first time in my life, I heard silence in the halls of Dominion Command. The Terran advance was days away. I was not a soldier. I was a chronicler, a witness to our rise and now our end. I expected the Terrans to arrive with fleets of vengeance. Instead, their ships descended slowly, cautiously, broadcasting coordinates for evacuation zones, medical drops, and ceasefire agreements. When they landed, I went to meet them. The Terran commander stepped out of his ship without armor. His uniform was scorched, patched in places with alien fabric. He looked tired, so tired, but his eyes carried something I had never seen in a victor's gaze: sorrow. I approached him, unarmed, and asked the question that had haunted me since Ragus Prime. Why show mercy? After all we've done, why not erase us? He regarded me for a long moment. Then he smiled, a small human thing. Because we remember what it's like to lose everything. It was not arrogance. It was remembrance. That was the moment I understood. The humans had not come to destroy. They had come to prevent anyone, friend or foe, from ever enduring the pain that forged them. Our archives show the gradual dismantling of the Dominion. Sector by sector, our banners came down. Worlds we once ruled began to speak their own names again. The titles of our nobility became relics, our laws, obsolete fragments of a forgotten tyranny. Some Xarthans joined the Terran coalition, not as slaves or servants, but as equals. Engineers, scientists, healers, all seeking to learn from those we once called savages. Others could not bear it. They clung to pride as their only inheritance, retreating into the void. But the humans never hunted them. They simply waited. Patience, mercy, endurance. These were weapons far more devastating than plasma or steel. As decades passed, the Dominion ceased to exist. Yet the memory of it lingered, etched in the ruins of our citadels and in the hearts of those who remembered what it meant to command without compassion. I have seen Terran fleets patrol our skies, not as conquerors, but as guardians. I have seen Xarthan children attend human schools, learning of Earth, the blue cradle that refused to die. And I have seen Terrans weep at our memorials, lighting candles beside our own for those lost on both sides. They taught us something our entire civilization had forgotten. That strength without empathy is not strength, it is fear pretending to be power. Years later, I found myself walking through the old war archives, where our greatest victories were once celebrated. Dust had gathered on the golden walls. Holograms of our fallen emperors flickered and died as I passed. At the end of the corridor stood a single preserved artifact, a fragment of the Vigilance hull, scorched black and inscribed with human script. Beneath it, translated into Xarthan, was a phrase left by the Terran restoration team. In defiance, we found unity. In unity, we found peace. I stared at those words for a long time. They had not conquered the Dominion. They had converted it, through example, not force. Our fall had been inevitable, not because we were weak, but because we had forgotten why we sought strength in the first place. Now, when I look to the stars, I no longer see the Dominion's dominion lines or the territories we once controlled. I see a patchwork of worlds, free, chaotic, alive. And somewhere among them, humanity endures, not as rulers of the galaxy, but as its conscience. We once believed we were eternal. We believed the stars themselves bowed to our will. But it was the humans, the fragile, stubborn creatures we mocked, who showed us the truth. Empires are not measured by the worlds they command. They are measured by the lives they lift. And in that measure, the Terrans had already won long before the first shot was fired. I record this now not as a historian of the Dominion, but as its last witness. Let the archives show that it was not human weapons that ended us. It was the human spirit, unyielding, compassionate, infinite, for in the end, it was not they who conquered us. It was hope. I write now in the quiet aftermath of an age that will never return. The Dominion is gone, its banners reduced to relics, its emblems archived in Terran museums beneath glass and light. I, Zalareth of the Xarthan Chroniclers Guild, am the last to remember it as it was, an empire of unbroken arrogance, and the civilization that ended it, not through domination, but through defiance. The stars are different now. They feel smaller, closer. Perhaps that is merely because fear no longer separates us. Humans walk among us openly, engineers, explorers, teachers, soldiers. When one enters a Xarthan hall, silence still falls. Not from hatred or reverence, but from remembrance. We remember the battles, yes, but also the mercy. We remember the moments they could have destroyed us and chose not to. The galaxy calls them Terrans. We, however, have another name, the kindred of fear and faith. In the archives, I have studied their histories, their endless cycles of war and rebirth. Worlds scorched and rebuilt, oceans poisoned and cleansed, species extinguished, and yet, somehow, reborn through memory and will. Their gods die, their empires collapse, their heroes fall, but humanity endures. Always. We Xarthans once mistook this persistence for savagery. Now I know better. It is not savagery that drives them, it is conviction. The Terrans have a belief deeper than religion, older than civilization itself, that no defeat is final, so long as one breath remains to defy it. Where we calculated probabilities, they gambled everything. Where we sought control, they embraced chaos. Where we feared death, they found purpose within it. I have seen human children play in the ruins of our grandest citadels, turning shattered marble into fortresses of imagination. To them, ruin is not an ending, it is a beginning. That, I think, is the true terror of their kind. Decades have passed since the Dominion's fall, and yet I find myself haunted by one image. The burning silhouette of the Terran Battleship Vigilant. Its guns still firing as it disintegrated above Ragus Prime. Every culture glorifies sacrifice, but the humans embody it. They turn loss into legend, pain into purpose. They do not fight because they believe they can win. They fight because surrender is unthinkable, and in that unyielding defiance, the galaxy has found its most paradoxical guardians. When Terran fleets patrol the frontier now, the oppressed do not hide. They hope. Even the most distant colonies whisper their arrival like a prayer. The Terrans are coming. Once that phrase filled our people with dread. Now it carries the weight of salvation. There are moments in the long hours of night when I still hear the echo of our past arrogance. The Dominion once believed fear was weakness, but humanity taught us the truth. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is the forge. To master it is to survive. To embrace it is to transcend. It is through fear that faith is born, not faith in gods or empires, but in the possibility of standing once more after falling. And so, I write these chronicles not as a record of defeat, but as a hymn to endurance. When I first met a Terran scholar, an aging man named Dr. Keller, he was cataloging ancient Xarthan star maps. I asked him what drove his people to push so far beyond their limits. He laughed softly and said, "Because there's always one more star." I did not understand then. Now I do. The humans are seekers of truth, of struggle, of meaning. Even peace to them is not an end, but another challenge to be maintained, protected, fought for. Today, the Dominion is a memory, and the galaxy is vast and free. Yet deep in every sentient heart, Xarthan, Terran, or otherwise, echoes a single truth humanity etched into the cosmos. Survival is not the absence of fear. It is the mastery of it. When the next great storm rises, and it will, some new terror will darken the stars. I will not be here to see it, but I have no doubt how it will end, because I have seen the Terrans rise from ashes, rebuild from extinction, and turn despair into defiance. They will stand again, and they will not stand alone. I pray that when that day comes, my descendants will fight beside them, because if the Terrans are on your side, you have already won.